Dubai, October 3, 2022. 7:15 a.m. The sunrise catches on the glass facades of Sheikh Zayed Road's skyscrapers, transforming them into towers of gold. In the shadow of these monuments to wealth, a staff bus winds through morning traffic, carrying dozens of uniformed healthcare workers to Al Rama Private Hospital. Among them sits Isla Santos, 26, Filipino national, her fingers tracing the outline of her newly laminated hospital ID. What happens in the next 6 months will transform her from an ambitious immigrant nurse to a woman capable of calculated revenge, leaving behind a trail of luxury, betrayal, and a death that no one questions. This isn't just a story about a forbidden relationship. It's about the invisible hierarchies that determine whose lives have value, whose dreams deserve fulfillment, and how far someone will go when everything they've sacrificed for is threatened. By the time this story ends, you'll question the true price of ambition and whether revenge ever brings the justice we seek. San Roque, Philippines, 2016. The small fishing village sat precariously on wooden stilts above murky waters, where the scent of salt and fish permeated everything. Inside the Santos family home, a 2-room structure with a rusting tin roof, 20-year-old Isla stared at her nursing school acceptance letter, its edges worn from countless readings. "You study. You become something," her mother had whispered one night, her hands rough from decades of scaling fish, her back permanently curved from bending over market stalls. Typhoon season brought its annual punishment, rain hammering the tin roof while water seeped through the wooden planks beneath their feet. During the worst storms, the family would huddle together on a single elevated platform, surrounded by their few precious possessions raised on plastic crates. "I will never live like this again," Isla whispered each night, a mantra that sustained her through 4 years of nursing school. Her education had been a series of sacrifices. Her father sold their only boat. Her mother took on cleaning work for wealthy families in Manila. Isla herself changed bedpans and washed bloody linens at a local clinic for practice and pennies. In her private journal, hidden beneath her thin mattress, Isla pasted magazine cutouts of luxury watches, designer handbags, and women draped in jewelry beside powerful men. Dreams impossible in San Roque, where clean water remained a luxury. "I will not just survive," she wrote one night, sealing the promise with a drop of blood from her finger. "I will thrive. I will have everything I've never had. And I will never, ever return to this place except as someone they barely recognize." 6 years later, Isla stepped off the plane at Dubai International Airport, her heart racing. The gleaming marble floors, the soaring ceilings, the women gliding past in designer clothing. It was everything she had imagined and more. Her recruitment agency had secured her a position at Al Rama Private Hospital, known for treating the Emirates elite. The salary was 5 times what she could earn in Manila. Reality hit when she arrived at her staff accommodation, a shared room with 3 other Filipina nurses in a crowded apartment building on the outskirts of the city. The walls were thin, the furniture worn, the bathroom shared by 8 women. After the initial disappointment, Isla reminded herself this was merely temporary. A starting point. "You should see the hospital," said Maya, her roommate who had been in Dubai for 2 years. "It's like a palace. And the patients, some of them give gifts that cost more than we make in months." Maya became Isla's first friend and guide in Dubai. At 28, she had the easy smile of someone who had adapted to her place in the complex social hierarchy of the Emirates. From their small balcony, they could see the distant glitter of downtown Dubai, the Burj Khalifa piercing the sky, the sprawling malls, the luxury hotels where they couldn't afford even a coffee. "My cousin married an Egyptian businessman," Maya confided one night. "She has a driver now, a maid. Her kids go to private school." "Is she happy?" Isla asked, her eyes fixed on the glittering skyline. Maya shrugged. "She's comfortable. In our world, that's not so different from happiness." Their conversations often turned to strategies, ambitions whispered between sips of cheap boxed wine, which patients might be potential benefactors, which wealthy men might see beyond their uniforms to the women beneath. "It's not about selling yourself," Maya insisted. "It's about positioning yourself where luck can find you." Isla nodded, but her thoughts were already racing ahead, calculating odds and opportunities with the same precision she applied to medication dosages. Al Rama Private Hospital resembled a luxury hotel more than a medical facility. The lobby featured marble fountains, million-dollar artwork, and receptionists who looked like fashion models. The staff entrance, however, reminded Isla of her position in this new world. Her daily routine began at 5:30 a.m. with the staff bus that wound through the city as the sun transformed the glass skyscrapers into towers of fire. At the hospital, she changed from her street clothes into the crisp white uniform that erased individuality but conveyed authority. The hierarchy was immediately apparent: Western doctors at the top, followed by Arab administrators, then Western nurses, and finally, Asian nurses like herself. "Dr. Williams needs these files immediately," an Arab administrator would say, not bothering with eye contact. "Mr. Habib is asking for more pillows," a British nurse would instruct, before returning to her conversation with the doctors. But Isla was determined to rise above these invisible barriers. She memorized patient details others overlooked, anticipated doctors' needs before they asked, and maintained a calm efficiency during emergencies that gradually earned her recognition. Santos handled the sheik's grandson's seizure perfectly. She overheard Dr. Krishnan telling the nursing supervisor, "Very composed, very professional." Small victories accumulated. Patients began requesting her by name. Doctors included her in complex case discussions. The nursing supervisor assigned her to increasingly important cases. "There's a wing on the top floor," Maya whispered during lunch one day. "VIP patients only. Royalty, government officials, billionaires. The nurses who work there get double the tips we do." Isla's eyes drifted toward the private elevator that led to the upper floors. "How do you get assigned there?" "You don't ask," Maya replied. "You get chosen." 3 months into her contract, the nursing supervisor called Isla into her office. The room was small but well-appointed, with certificates covering the walls and a window overlooking the hospital gardens. "Santos, we have a special assignment for you." The supervisor's voice was crisp, professional. "Tariq Al-Fahim is being admitted tomorrow. He's requested our best care team." Isla maintained her professional demeanor, but her pulse quickened. Even she knew the Al-Fahim name, one of the wealthiest families in the Emirates, with businesses spanning construction, hotels, and technology. "He's coming in for what appears to be complications from pneumonia, though his full medical history is confidential. You'll be his primary nurse during the day shift. Dr. Krishnan will brief you on the specifics." That night, Isla researched everything she could find about Tariq Al-Fahim. Articles detailed his business empire, his philanthropic donations, his appearances at social events with his wife Zara, a woman known for her beauty and taste. There were rumors of his declining health in recent years, though no specifics were mentioned in the press. "You're playing with fire," Maya warned when Isla shared her assignment. "These VIP patients, they expect perfection. One mistake and your career here is over." "I don't make mistakes," Isla replied, continuing to scroll through images of Tariq's luxury properties. "It's not just about medical care," Maya persisted. "These men, they develop attachments to their nurses. They cross boundaries. And when you're a foreign worker on a sponsored visa, saying no isn't always simple." Isla looked up from her phone, meeting Maya's concerned gaze. "I can handle myself. Just remember why we're here," Maya said. "To work, to save, to go home better than we left." "Of course," Isla agreed, though her eyes returned to the image on her screen, Tariq Al-Fahim, standing beside his private jet, his expression commanding even through the digital interface. The VIP suite occupied the entire east wing of the top floor. Isla's footsteps were silenced by plush carpeting as she approached the room where Tariq Al-Fahim awaited. The door was solid wood, carved with intricate patterns, and guarded by security personnel who checked her ID before allowing her entry. Inside, the space resembled a luxury apartment more than a hospital room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city. The medical equipment was discreetly integrated into custom cabinetry. A separate sitting area featured leather sofas and a dining table where a chef's breakfast lay untouched. Tariq Al-Fahim sat propped against pillows on the king-sized hospital bed. His frame thinner than the photographs suggested, but his presence no less commanding. At 55, his face showed the marks of power, deep lines around piercing eyes that assessed her immediately, a mouth accustomed to giving orders rather than requests. "Mr. Al-Fahim, I'm Isla Santos, your primary nurse during your stay with us." "You're new," he stated rather than asked. "I haven't seen you before." "I've been with Al Rama for 3 months, sir. Previously, I worked at Manila General in the Philippines." His eyes narrowed slightly, taking in her features, her posture, the way she held his chart. On the bedside table, expensive gifts were arranged, a Patek Philippe watch still in its box, silk pajamas from Hermes, gourmet dates in a gold-embossed container. From his wife, Isla presumed, though there was no sign of her presence. "They tell me I have pneumonia again," he said, his voice surprisingly soft for a man of his stature. "Third time this year." Isla checked his vital signs, noting the elevated temperature, the slight wheeze in his breathing. "We'll make sure this is the last time, sir." As she adjusted his foreline, she felt his eyes following her movements. The intensity should have made her uncomfortable, but instead, she felt a flutter of opportunity. She worked with practiced efficiency, explaining each medication and procedure with clarity and confidence. When she finished her assessment, he asked, "Will you be here tomorrow as well?" "Yes, sir. I'll be your primary nurse throughout your stay." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. I prefer consistency." As she turned to leave, he added, "My wife will visit this afternoon. She'll want updates on my condition." "Of course, Mr. Al-Fahim. I'll prepare a detailed report." At the door, she paused when he called her name, not nurse but Isla, the sound of it in his accent sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Yes, sir. I hope you don't find pneumonia too boring for your skills." The comment was delivered with a subtle lift of his eyebrow, a hint of flirtation that crossed professional boundaries while maintaining plausible deniability. Isla measured her response carefully, allowing just enough warmth into her smile. "There's no such thing as a boring patient, Mr. Al-Fahim. Only opportunities to provide excellent care." His answering smile confirmed what she had suspected from the moment she entered the room. Tariq Al-Fahim saw her, not just as another Filipina nurse, but as a woman, and in that recognition lay possibilities that extended far beyond her professional duties. As the door closed behind her, Isla's mind was already calculating the potential value of the watch on his bedside table, and more importantly, what it might mean that his wife had sent gifts rather than bringing them herself. What Isla Santos couldn't know as she walked away from Tariq Al-Fahim's suite was that she had just taken the first step toward a relationship that would transform them both, him into a victim, her into an avenger. The luxury, the wealth, the opportunity she sought would all come at a price neither of them could anticipate. And by the time she discovered the truth about the man whose life was now in her hands, it would be too late for either of them to turn back. Over the next 3 weeks, Isla became the constant in Tariq Al-Fahim's recovery. Each morning at 7 a.m. sharp, she entered his suite with a quiet confidence that set her apart from the other nurses who attended him during evening shifts. Her meticulous attention to detail, the perfect angle of his pillows, the precise timing of his medications, the way she anticipated his discomfort before he voiced it, earned her not just his trust but his growing fascination. Their relationship evolved in increments so subtle they were nearly imperceptible to outsiders. First came the extended conversations during his treatments. Then the requests for her to stay after her duties were complete. Then the questions that ventured beyond his medical care. "Tell me about the Philippines," he said one afternoon as she checked his for. The pneumonia had largely cleared, but he remained at the hospital under observation, his stay extending well beyond medical necessity. Isla provided carefully curated glimpses of her background, edited versions of the truth that emphasized her humble origins while omitting the desperation that had driven her ambition. "We lived near the water," she told him. "My father was a fisherman." "It must have been beautiful," Tariq mused, his eyes never leaving her face. "Sometimes," she conceded. "But beauty doesn't fill empty stomachs." She watched his expression soften with each story. The schoolhouse with its leaking roof, her mother walking miles to the market each day, the single light bulb that illuminated their home when electricity was available. Each detail carefully calibrated to evoke not pity but admiration for her resilience, while simultaneously reminding him of the vast gulf between their circumstances. "You've overcome so much," he remarked, the admiration in his voice unmistakable. "Most people in your situation would have accepted their fate." Isla smiled, lowering her eyes in practiced modesty. "I believe we make our own fate, Mr. Al-Fahim." As Tariq's health improved, his complaints about his wife increased. Zara had visited only twice since his admission, brief, formal appearances that left an atmosphere of tension in their wake. 20 years of marriage, Tariq confided one evening, his voice low though they were alone. "And now she can barely stand to be in the same room as me." Isla listened attentively, her face a mask of professional sympathy that concealed her calculation. Each revelation about his marriage was a piece of information to be stored and analyzed later. "She has her separate life now, her charities, her social circle. We haven't shared a bedroom in years." "I'm sorry," Isla responded, the perfect note of compassion in her voice. "That must be difficult for you." "It's the price of success in our world," he said with a resigned smile. "But it's a cold comfort some nights." The morning of Tariq's scheduled discharge, Isla arrived to find a small turquoise box on the counter of his suite. "Tiffany and Company," the distinctive color announced to anyone familiar with luxury goods. "A small token of my appreciation," Tariq said, gesturing for her to open it. Inside lay a platinum bracelet, delicate but unmistakably expensive. Isla's breath caught as she lifted it from its velvet nest. "Mr. Al-Fahim, I can't accept this," she said, though her fingers lingered on the cool metal. "It's against hospital policy." "Please," he insisted. "You've provided exceptional care. This is merely a gesture of gratitude." Her hesitation was calculated, just long enough to appear genuine but not so long as to offend. "If you're certain." "I am," he said firmly, taking the bracelet and fastening it around her wrist himself. His fingers brushed against her skin, lingering a moment longer than necessary. The bracelet caught the attention of every nurse at the station as Isla completed her morning rounds. Some eyed it with obvious envy, others with suspicion. By lunchtime, the whispers had reached the nursing supervisor, who called Isla into her office. "The bracelet, Santos." The supervisor's tone was clipped. "You know hospital policy about accepting gifts from patients." "It was a token of appreciation for his care," Isla explained, her expression innocently professional. "I didn't want to offend him by refusing." The supervisor's eyes narrowed. "The Al-Fahims are important to this hospital. But remember your position here. Don't mistake gratitude for something else." That evening in their shared apartment, Maya confronted her directly. "Everyone's talking about the bracelet." Isla shrugged, the platinum catching the light as she prepared dinner. "It was just a thank you gift." "A thank you gift worth 3 months of our salary," Maya countered. "You're playing a dangerous game, Isla." "It's not a game," Isla replied, her voice hardening slightly. "It's an opportunity." Maya studied her friend's face. "Just be careful. I've seen nurses deported for less. The rules are different for people like us." Before Isla could respond, her phone chimed with a message. Tariq inviting her to lunch the following day, her day off. 2 days later, Isla was preparing to leave for her lunch with Tariq when the door to his hospital suite swung open unexpectedly. The woman who entered moved with the effortless grace of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Tall and slender, with olive skin and eyes that missed nothing, she carried herself with a regal composure that made her designer clothing seem almost incidental to her elegance. Zara Al-Fahim paused momentarily when she saw Isla, her gaze coolly assessing. "You must be the nurse my husband has mentioned," she said, her English accented but impeccable. "Isla, yes. Yes, Mrs. Al-Fahim. I was just finishing up before your husband's discharge." Zara nodded, moving past Isla to where Tariq sat on the edge of the bed, dressed in a tailored suit despite his recent illness. The distance between them as she kissed his cheek was palpable, a formal gesture between strangers rather than spouses. "The car is waiting," Zara informed him. "I've had Rashid bring your medications from home." Tariq nodded, his manner changing subtly in his wife's presence. More formal, less animated. "Isla has been managing my care. Perhaps she could review the regimen with Rashid." Zara's eyes flicked between them, noting something in Tariq's tone that Isla couldn't decipher. "Of course, whatever you think is best." As Tariq gathered his remaining items, Zara turned her attention back to Isla. "My husband can be a difficult patient. I appreciate your dedication to his care." The words were polite, but the subtext was clear. Zara was neither blind nor naive. She recognized the dynamics at play, even if she chose not to acknowledge them directly. "It's my job, Mrs. Al-Fahim," Isla replied, matching Zara's measured tone. "Yes," Zara agreed, her gaze unwavering. "It is." As Isla watched them leave, Tariq leaning slightly on a cane, Zara a half-step behind him, she felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Jealousy at Zara's effortless wealth and position, irritation at the woman's quiet dignity, and beneath it all, a hardening determination that what Zara took for granted, Isla would claim for herself. 2 weeks after Tariq's discharge, Isla received a call from the hospital administration. Tariq Al-Fahim had requested her specifically for private home nursing care following a relapse of his symptoms. The arrangement would be through the hospital's VIP services program, at triple her regular salary. The nursing supervisor eyed Isla with barely concealed suspicion as she outlined the terms. "This is a professional medical assignment, Santos. The Al-Fahim family has significant influence with our board of directors. Any impropriety would reflect poorly on the entire hospital." "I understand completely," Isla assured her, maintaining a perfect mask of professional detachment. The Al-Fahim estate sprawled across 2 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds in Emirates Hills, Dubai's most exclusive residential enclave. A security checkpoint screened visitors before they even reached the main gate. Beyond it, date palms lined a private drive that curved toward a mansion of modernist design. All clean lines, vast expanses of glass, and gleaming white stone. A staff member met Isla at the entrance, escorting her through an atrium where a glass ceiling soared 3 stories above an indoor garden with a marble fountain at its center. The air was cool and perfumed, the surfaces gleaming, the silence absolute except for the gentle splashing of water. Original artwork adorned walls that seemed to extend endlessly, each piece worth more than Isla would earn in a decade. Tariq awaited her in a private study. A wood-paneled room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furnishings that felt more intimate than the grand spaces she'd passed through. He sat in a wheelchair, looking friendlier than he had at the hospital, but his eyes brightened at her arrival. "Isla," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Al-Fahim," she responded professionally, setting down her medical bag. "How have you been feeling since your discharge?" "Tariq, please," he insisted. "And I've been better. The fatigue has returned. And the night sweats." Isla began her assessment, noting his elevated temperature and the slight tremor in his hands. As she worked, she absorbed the details of her surroundings. The antique desk with its silver-framed photographs of Tariq with various dignitaries. The leather-bound books arranged by color rather than content. The subtle scent of oud that permeated the space. "Is Mrs. Al-Fahim at home?" Isla asked casually as she recorded his vitals. "Zara is in London," Tariq replied. "A charity auction. She'll be gone for 2 weeks." The information settled between them, its implications unspoken but understood. Over the following days, Isla's role in the Al-Fahim household expanded beyond medical care. She accompanied Tariq to his home office where he conducted business calls despite his weakened state. She joined him for meals in the vast dining room, prepared by a private chef who tailored the menu to his restricted diet. She sat with him in the evenings as he spoke of his business empire, his political connections, his vision for the future. Each day, the lines between nurse and companion blurred further. Tariq's hand lingering on hers as she adjusted his oxygen. His request that she call him by his first name. The personal questions that had nothing to do with his health. "You're different from the other nurses," he told her one evening as they sat on the terrace overlooking the city lights. "You see beyond the illness to the man." "Perhaps I just see people more clearly than most," Isla suggested, allowing a hint of intimacy into her voice. The moment arrived with an inevitability that both had anticipated. Isla was helping Tariq from his wheelchair to his bed, a task she had performed dozens of times before. But this time, as she leaned forward, his hand came up to cup her face. "Stay," he whispered, his eyes holding hers. Isla hesitated, her expression carefully calibrated to suggest reluctance warring with desire. "Tariq, I'm your nurse." "You're much more than that," he countered, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You must know how I feel." She allowed herself to lean into his touch, just slightly. "This is complicated." "Life is complicated," he replied. "Happiness shouldn't be." When his lips met hers, Isla closed her eyes, suppressing the instinctive revulsion at the touch of a man 3 decades her senior. She returned the kiss with practiced passion, her mind already racing ahead to calculate how this moment would transform her position in his life and her access to his wealth. Later that night, in the privacy of her staff quarters, a luxurious suite that nevertheless reminded her of her position in the household, Isla messaged Maya. "It's happening," she wrote, "faster than I expected." Maya's reply came quickly. "Be careful. Men like him don't give something for nothing." Isla smiled at the screen, touching the diamond earrings Tariq had presented her with that evening. Her second gift in as many weeks. "Some prices," she typed back, "are worth paying." What Isla couldn't know as she lay in her bed, planning her ascent into Tariq's world, was that this was merely the beginning of a transaction whose true cost remained hidden from her. In his private bathroom across the mansion, Tariq swallowed his evening medications, a cocktail of antiretrovirals that he had never disclosed to her, that were not listed in the medical records she had access to, and whose purpose would remain concealed until it was far too late. By January 2023, Isla Santos had perfected the art of living 2 separate lives. 3 days a week, she maintained her position at Al Rama Hospital, moving efficiently through the wards in her standard-issue uniform, her demeanor professional and unassuming. The other 4 days, she served as Tariq's private nurse, a role that had expanded far beyond medical care. The transition between these worlds required meticulous attention to detail. At the hospital, she kept her appearance modest. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, no jewelry except for a simple watch. But in her locker lay evidence of her other life. A Chanel compact, La Mer moisturizer, a Hermes scarf carefully folded in tissue paper. Small luxuries she allowed herself in the staff bathroom before meeting Tariq. Her collection of designer items grew weekly. The platinum bracelet was joined by diamond earrings, a Van Cleef and Arpels necklace, a Rolex watch that she wore only when away from the hospital. She stored these treasures in a safe installed in her room at the staff accommodation, the combination known only to her. The contrast between her worlds was never more stark than when Tariq took her to dinner at Pier Chic, Dubai's most exclusive seafood restaurant perched at the end of a pier extending into the Arabian Gulf. As they dined on lobster and sipped champagne that cost more than her weekly salary, Isla could see her staff housing in the distance, a nondescript building where 8 nurses shared a 3-bedroom apartment. "What are you thinking about?" Tariq asked, noticing her gaze drifting toward the shoreline. "How different life can be," she replied honestly, "depending on which side of the city you call home." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You were meant for this side, Isla. Anyone can see that." In private moments, Isla allowed herself to imagine a permanent place in Tariq's world. The UAE permitted multiple wives for Emirati men, a fact she had researched extensively. As his second wife, she would have legal rights, financial security, a place in society that transcended her status as a foreign worker. The fantasy sustained her through the indignities of her arrangement, the separate entrance she used at his mansion, the staff quarters where she retreated when family members visited, the way he never introduced her to his business associates. But as February turned to March, Isla noticed troubling changes in Taric's condition. Despite her care, his health was deteriorating in ways she couldn't fully explain. Night sweats returned with greater frequency. His weight dropped despite the private chef's efforts. Most concerning was the persistent cough that seemed resistant to treatment. "Have you considered seeing a specialist?" she suggested one morning as she recorded his temperature. Elevated again despite the antipyretics. "I have my own medical team," he replied dismissively. "They're monitoring the situation." Isla frowned. "I haven't seen any recent test results." "You don't need to see everything, Isla," Tariq said, his tone hardening slightly. "Just manage the symptoms as we discussed." His medication regimen was complex and regimented. Pills taken at precise intervals throughout the day, some requiring food, others requiring an empty stomach. Tariq insisted on handling certain medications himself, keeping them in a locked cabinet in his private bathroom. "These are for a separate condition," he explained when she questioned him. "Nothing for you to worry about." Each evasion heightened Isla's curiosity. During her nursing training, she had learned to recognize patterns of symptoms, and Tariq's constellation was increasingly familiar. Yet his official diagnosis of recurrent pneumonia didn't account for the full picture. Her opportunity came when Tariq traveled to Abu Dhabi for a business meeting, leaving her at the mansion to prepare his medications for the following day. While organizing his weekly pill container, she noticed a prescription bottle he had left out accidentally. The label had been partially removed, but she could make out enough of the generic name, tenofovir disoproxil. The medication name triggered an immediate recognition from her pharmacology courses. It was an antiretroviral used primarily for HIV treatment. The realization struck her like a physical blow. Before she could process this discovery, a voice behind her made her jump. "Finding everything you need?" Zara Al-Fahim stood in the doorway, elegant in a tailored pantsuit, her expression unreadable. Isla hadn't known she was returning from London today. "Mrs. Al-Fahim," Isla stammered, quickly replacing the bottle. "I was just organizing Tariq's medications for tomorrow." Zara entered the room fully, her heels clicking against the marble floor. How convenient that he found a nurse who could also warm his bed. The bluntness of the statement left Isla momentarily speechless. She had assumed their relationship remained hidden from Zara. "I don't know what you mean," she attempted, but Zara cut her off with a cold laugh. "Please, you're hardly the first, though you've lasted longer than most." Isla straightened, finding her composure. "I care for your husband, Mrs. Al-Fahim, professionally and personally." "I'm sure you care for what he provides," Zara countered. "The gifts, the attention, the promise of something more." She moved closer, her voice dropping. "A word of advice. Don't mistake access for security. In this world, they're not the same thing. With respect, I think that's between Tariq and me." Zara's expression shifted, something like pity flashing across her features. "You don't know what you're involved in, Ms. Santos, and that's the most dangerous position to be in." With that cryptic warning, she turned and left, leaving Isla to interpret the encounter. She dismissed Zara's words as jealousy, the bitter reaction of a wife who had lost her husband's interest and now feared losing his resources as well. The prescription bottle, however, remained at the forefront of her mind. That night, she researched tenofovir extensively, confirming her suspicion about its primary use. Had Tariq been diagnosed with HIV? Was this the reason for the separate bedroom Zara had mentioned, for the deteriorating health that standard treatments couldn't address? She debated confronting him but decided against it. Knowledge was power, and this discovery gave her leverage she might need later. 2 weeks after the encounter with Zara, Tariq invited Isla to his study after dinner. The room was lit only by a desk lamp and the Dubai skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. He seemed unusually contemplative, swirling aged scotch in a crystal tumbler. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," he began, gesturing for her to sit opposite him. "It's becoming complicated to maintain." Isla felt a momentary panic. Was he ending their relationship? The hospital is asking questions about your extended assignment, he continued, and your presence here raises eyebrows among the staff. I understand, she said carefully. If you think it's best to end our professional arrangement. That's not what I'm suggesting, Tariq interrupted. Quite the opposite, in fact. He reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside lay a key attached to a Bulgari keychain. I've purchased an apartment in downtown Dubai, he explained. The Palm Residence. It's registered in my company's name, but it would be exclusively for your use. Isla stared at the key, its implications clear. Not his second wife, but his mistress, installed in a luxury apartment, available whenever he wished, but separate from his public life. This would give us both more freedom, Tariq continued. You could leave the hospital entirely. I'll provide a monthly allowance that exceeds your current salary. And what would my role be, exactly? Isla asked, though she already knew the answer. You would still oversee my health needs, he said smoothly, but without the complications of hospital oversight or household staff observing our every interaction. It wasn't what she had hoped for. No legal status, no public acknowledgement, but it was a significant step up from her current position. The Palm Residence was one of Dubai's most prestigious addresses. An apartment there would cost millions. I'll need to think about it, she said, though her mind was already calculating the advantages. Tariq smiled, confident in her eventual acceptance. Of course, take your time. 3 days later, Isla moved into a 3-bedroom apartment on the 40th floor of the Palm Residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Dubai skyline and the Arabian Gulf beyond. Italian marble floors, a gourmet kitchen she would rarely use, a master bathroom larger than her entire family home in San Roque. Every detail spoke of wealth that still felt surreal to possess. Her first act was to go shopping. With the debit card Tariq had provided, linked to an account in his company's name, she purchased an entirely new wardrobe. Valentino dresses, Louboutin heels, Prada handbags. Each acquisition felt like another step away from the girl who had once washed bloody linens for pennies. The distance between her old life and new became a chasm that few could cross. Maya called several times after Isla abruptly resigned from the hospital, but Isla's responses grew increasingly vague and infrequent. I miss you, Maya texted one evening. Whatever's happening, I hope you're being careful. Isla stared at the message from her balcony, glass of champagne in hand, unsure how to bridge the gulf between them. How could she explain this new reality to someone still living in staff housing, counting dirhams until payday? To her family in the Philippines, she crafted an elaborate fiction. She had been promoted to head nurse for a private medical service catering to Dubai's elite. The position came with luxury housing and exceptional pay. She doubled her remittances home, enough for her parents to build a new concrete house with a proper roof that wouldn't leak during typhoon season. God has blessed you, Anik, her mother said during their weekly video call, showing off the construction progress. Your hard work has paid off. Isla smiled and nodded, angling her phone camera to hide the Cartier bracelet on her wrist and the Versace silk robe draped over her shoulders. The deception was necessary, she told herself. Some truths were better left unspoken. As April turned to May, Isla settled into her new role with practiced ease. Tariq visited 3 or 4 times weekly, his private driver bringing him discreetly through the building's service entrance. She managed his medications, monitored his health, and fulfilled her other obligations with calculated enthusiasm. But beneath the surface luxury of her new life, questions continued to gnaw at her. The prescription she had discovered, Zara's cryptic warning, Tariq's declining health despite the best medical care money could buy. Each piece formed part of a puzzle whose complete picture remained just beyond her grasp, a picture that would soon come into devastating focus. By June, Tariq's health had deteriorated to a point Isla could no longer ignore. The night sweats left his sheets drenched each morning. His weight loss was now visible even through his tailored suits. The persistent cough had developed into something deeper, more concerning. Most alarming were the purple lesions that had appeared on his chest, small at first, but growing in size and number. Isla recognized the symptoms from her nursing textbooks, but Tariq maintained his pneumonia diagnosis whenever she pressed him. His evasiveness only strengthened her suspicions. "I think we should consult with an infectious disease specialist," she suggested one evening as she administered his 4 antibiotics, the 3rd course in 2 months with minimal improvement. "My personal physician is handling everything," Tariq replied, his voice weaker than it had been just weeks before. "This is merely a stubborn infection. These symptoms suggest something more systemic," Isla persisted, carefully watching his reaction. "Perhaps we should review your complete medical history to identify any underlying conditions." His eyes narrowed slightly, the first flash of suspicion she'd seen directed at her. "You have all the information you need, Isla. Focus on the treatment we've discussed. Focus on the treatment we've discussed." That night after Tariq left, Isla sat on her balcony staring at the Dubai skyline, turning the prescription bottle she'd found in his bathroom over in her hands. Tenofovir disoproxil. The evidence was mounting, but she needed certainty. Her hospital resignation had been processed, but her access badge still worked, a system oversight she had counted on. At 2 a.m., when the administrative offices were empty, Isla entered Al Rama Hospital through the staff entrance. Her white coat and confident stride carried her past the night security guard with nothing more than a tired nod of recognition. The records department was locked, but Isla had memorized the access code months earlier during her regular shifts. Inside, she navigated to the terminal reserved for senior medical staff and entered her former supervisor's credentials. The search for Tariq Al-Fahim's records yielded multiple files, most with restricted access. Isla bypassed these security measures using techniques she had learned from the IT staff during system upgrades. The complete file opened before her, revealing a medical history dating back 15 years. There it was on the 3rd page. HIV positive diagnosis, December 2012. The confirmation rendered her momentarily breathless. Treatment had begun immediately, expensive antiretroviral therapy available only to the wealthiest patients in the Emirates. The pneumonia episodes were opportunistic infections resulting from a compromised immune system. Isla scrolled through the treatment notes with increasing horror. Tariq had been living with HIV for over a decade. His viral load had been undetectable for years with proper medication, but recent tests showed the virus was active again, likely due to medication resistance or noncompliance. Most damning was a note from 6 months ago, when Tariq had expressly refused to sign disclosure forms that would require him to inform sexual partners of his status. The attending physician had documented his concern but noted the patient's social position and privacy concerns as factors in not pursuing the matter further. The realization hit Isla like a physical blow. Every intimate encounter flashed through her mind, moments she had endured for strategic purposes, never imagining they carried potential consequences beyond her calculated risk assessment. She printed key pages of the file, folded them into her bag, and left the hospital, her mind racing with implications. By morning, her shock had hardened into something colder, more determined. She contacted a private clinic in Abu Dhabi, where she wouldn't be recognized, and scheduled an immediate appointment for HIV testing. The 3 days between the test and results stretched into an eternity. Isla moved through her apartment like a ghost, unable to eat, barely sleeping. She rehearsed possible outcomes, planning her next steps for either result. The luxurious surroundings that had once represented her triumph now felt like a gilded cage. When her phone finally rang, the doctor's carefully neutral tone told her everything before the actual words confirmed it. HIV positive. Early stage. Additional tests would determine the best treatment protocol. Isla ended the call and sank to the marble floor of her bathroom, her body convulsing with silent sobs. The pristine white surfaces blurred through her tears as the full weight of her situation crashed over her. This diagnosis was a life sentence. Medication forever, stigma forever, consequences forever. In desperation, she called the one person who might understand. "I need you," she told Maya, her voice breaking. "Please come." Maya arrived within the hour, taking in Isla's disheveled appearance with quiet concern. Isla had never allowed herself to appear vulnerable before, not even in their closest moments. "What happened?" Maya asked, guiding Isla to the sofa. Isla's explanation emerged in fragments between sobs, the diagnosis, the betrayal, the fear. She showed Maya the medical records, watching her friend's expression shift from confusion to horror to rage. He knew, Maya whispered. All this time he knew? Isla nodded, wiping tears with the back of her hand. He never told me, never gave me the choice. You need to report him, Maya insisted. This is criminal. And then what? Isla's voice hardened. I'm deported back to the Philippines with nothing but a diagnosis and shame? My family finds out I've been a rich man's mistress instead of a respected nurse. Maya reached for her hand. Who did this to you, Isla? Please tell me. Isla pulled away. It doesn't matter now. Of course it matters. He needs to be held responsible. Responsibility won't change my diagnosis, Isla replied, a new coldness entering her voice. But there are other forms of justice. The confrontation took place in Tariq's home office 2 days later. Isla arrived unannounced, bypassing the surprise staff with the familiarity of someone who belonged there. Tariq was at his desk, visibly startled by her unexpected appearance. Isla, I wasn't expecting you today, he began, but fell silent when she placed the medical records on his desk. 10 years, she said, her voice steady despite the rage coursing through her. You've known for 10 years, and you said nothing. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something harder. You accessed my private medical records. I accessed the truth you deliberately concealed, she countered. The truth that has now altered my entire life. Tariq leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking every day of his 55 years. I've been on medication. My viral load was undetectable for years. Until it wasn't, Isla snapped, pointing to the recent test results. You've been infectious for months. You knew the risks, and you chose to expose me anyway. You're a nurse, he replied, his tone dismissive. You should understand that these things happen. The casual cruelty of his response staggered her. These things happen? This wasn't an accident, Tariq. This was a choice you made every single day. He sighed, rubbing his temple. What do you want, Isla? Money? I can arrange treatment, the best specialists. I want you to admit what you've done, she interrupted. Not just to me, but to how many others before me? A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed his face before disappearing. You're not the first person to find my circumstances advantageous. Nurses, staff, they all want something. I provided what you wanted. And Zara? Does she know about your condition? Tariq's laugh was hollow. Zara has known from the beginning. Why do you think we haven't shared a bed in years? Our marriage is a business arrangement, nothing more. She keeps her lifestyle. I maintain my public image. The revelation sent Isla reeling. Zara had known all along, had watched her husband seduce a young nurse while fully aware of the risks he posed. I'll provide for you, of course, Tariq continued, his tone suddenly businesslike. A settlement, continued use of the apartment, medical care, in exchange for your discretion. Isla stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as the powerful man who could elevate her status, but as a moral void disguised in expensive suits, treating human lives as commodities to be purchased and discarded. I'll be in touch about the terms, she said finally, gathering the medical records. She needed time to process, to plan. For 3 days after her confrontation with Tariq, Isla remained alone in her apartment, blinds drawn against the Dubai sunlight. The gleaming marble floors, designer furniture, and panoramic views, once symbols of her ascent, now felt like monuments to her folly. She ignored calls from Tariq, from the clinic, even from Maya. In the darkness, surrounded by luxury purchased at an unimaginable price, Isla's shock crystallized into rage. Her laptop screen illuminated her face as she researched her new reality. Treatment protocols, survival rates, long-term complications. Each article reinforced what she already knew. Modern medicine could manage HIV, but never cure it. This virus would remain with her forever, a permanent souvenir from Tariq Al-Fahim. On the 4th day, she showered, dressed in a crisp white shirt and black trousers, and opened the blinds. The morning light revealed her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, thinner, paler, but with eyes that burned with newfound purpose. "If I am marked for life," she whispered to her reflection, "then so are you." Isla's nursing education had included extensive pharmacology training. She understood drug interactions, contraindications, the delicate balance of medications that kept Tariq's condition managed. His complex regimen required precise timing and dosing, a system she had overseen for months. She began with research, using her medical credentials to access journal articles about antiretroviral medications and their interactions. Tariq's primary treatment included a combination of drugs, the tenofovir she had discovered, plus emtricitabine and efavirenz. The careful calibration of these medications kept his viral load suppressed. Any disruption could lead to rapid deterioration. Isla constructed her plan with clinical precision. The tampered medications would not directly poison Tariq, too obvious, too traceable. Instead, she would gradually alter the balance of his treatment, replacing certain pills with similar-looking placebos, adjusting dosages in ways that would appear as prescription errors rather than sabotage. The result would be a cascading failure of his immune system, a process that would appear as a natural progression of his disease. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, the damage would be irreversible. As she mapped out each step in a notebook, later shredded and burned in her kitchen sink, Isla felt a momentary hesitation. The Hippocratic oath she had taken upon graduating nursing school echoed in her mind. First, do no harm. That night, she called her parents in the Philippines. Their new concrete house stood complete in the background of the video call, a testament to the money she had sent home. Her mother showed off the new refrigerator. Her father proudly pointed to the satellite dish on the roof. "When will you visit, Anik?" her mother asked. "We want to show everyone how successful our daughter has become." Isla forced a smile. "Soon, Mama. I just have some things to finish here first." After the call, her resolve hardened. She would never be able to return home and face her family if they knew the truth, not just about her diagnosis, but about how she had obtained the wealth they now enjoyed. The shame would destroy them as surely as it was destroying her. Maya called again the next day. Isla answered this time but revealed nothing of her plans. "I'm worried about you," Maya said. "You don't sound like yourself." "I'm adjusting," Isla replied vaguely. "I need time." "What are you going to do about him?" Maya pressed. "Nothing that concerns you," Isla said, her tone making it clear the subject was closed. "The less you know, the better." The distance in her voice made Maya pause. "Isla, don't do anything. I need to go." Isla interrupted. "I'll call you soon." She ended the call, knowing that Maya suspected something but trusting her friend would not interfere. Some bonds transcended morality, and their shared experiences as foreign workers in a system stacked against them created an understanding that required no explanation. Acquiring the necessary components for her plan required patience and caution. Over the course of 2 weeks, Isla made seemingly innocuous purchases from different pharmacies across Dubai, over-the-counter medications whose ingredients could be extracted and repurposed, empty gelatin capsules for vitamin supplements, a pill cutter for precise dosing of her medications. She studied Tariq's schedule with renewed attention, noting the patterns of his visits, the routine of his medication times, the staff rotations at his home. Every detail was committed to memory, every variable accounted for. In her bathroom, with surgical gloves and a mask, Isla meticulously prepared the altered medications. Some pills were replaced entirely with identical-looking placebos. Others were reduced to half-strength, ensuring his treatment would fail gradually rather than suddenly. The original pills were flushed down the toilet, the evidence disappearing into Dubai's sewage system. She practiced her normal demeanor in the mirror, rehearsing the concerned expression she would wear when his symptoms worsened, the professional calm with which she would suggest adjustments to his care. The woman who stared back at her seemed like a stranger, composed, calculating, capable of extraordinary deception. The night before she was scheduled to visit Tariq, Isla stood on her balcony overlooking the city. The ethical weight of her decision pressed down on her one final time. Was she truly capable of this? Could she deliberately set in motion events that would lead to a man's death, regardless of what he had done to her? A memory surfaced, Taric's dismissive tone when confronted with his deception. These things happen. His casual cruelty, his complete disregard for her life, her future, her choices. In that moment, her last hesitation evaporated. She was no longer the naive nurse who had arrived in Dubai with dreams of advancement. She was a woman who had been used, infected, and discarded, and she would respond in kind. The following morning, Isla arrived at the Al-Fahim estate with her nursing bag containing the tampered medications. She greeted the staff with her usual professionalism, betraying nothing of her intentions. Tariq was in his study, visibly weakened since their confrontation. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his breathing sounded labored even at rest. He looked up as she entered, surprise giving way to wariness. "I didn't expect to see you again," he said. "I'm still your nurse," Isla replied evenly. "And you still need care." Relief softened his features. He had anticipated demands, threats, exposure, not this apparent acceptance. "I've prepared documents for your settlement," he said. "The apartment will remain yours. My lawyers have arranged a generous monthly allowance." Isla nodded, opening her bag to prepare his medications. "Your health is my primary concern right now. You've been missing doses." "The new nurse doesn't understand my regimen," he admitted. With gloved hands, Isla arranged his pills in the familiar pattern, the genuine ones and the altered ones indistinguishable to the naked eye. She added a small amount of crushed sedative to his water. Not enough to harm, just enough to ensure he wouldn't question the subtle metallic taste as he swallowed each pill. "This should help stabilize your condition," she said, watching as he took each medication. "I've adjusted some dosages based on your recent symptoms." Tariq nodded gratefully, unaware that he had just consumed the instruments of his own destruction. "You've always understood my needs better than anyone." "Yes," Isla agreed, her voice soft as she packed away her supplies. "I understand exactly what you need." As she prepared to leave, Tariq caught her hand. "I am sorry, Isla, for everything." She looked into his eyes, searching for genuine remorse but finding only the self-pity of a man facing consequences he had never anticipated. "So am I," she replied, gently withdrawing her hand. "We all make choices we must live with, or die with," she added silently as she walked away. For the next 2 weeks, Isla maintained her routine visits, administering the tampered medications with methodical precision. Tariq's condition deteriorated rapidly, faster than even she had anticipated. His immune system, already compromised, collapsed under the assault of viral replication unchecked by effective medication. When the call came at 3 a.m., Isla was awake, sitting in darkness, waiting. Tariq's household manager informed her that he had been rushed to the hospital with severe respiratory distress. She dressed quickly, her shock and concern perfectly calibrated as she rushed to Al Rama Hospital. By the time she arrived, Tariq was in intensive care, intubated and unresponsive. The attending physician, the same one who had noted his refusal to disclose his HIV status, explained that his condition appeared to be a severe case of pneumocystis pneumonia, an opportunistic infection common in advanced HIV cases. "His viral load is extremely high," the doctor explained. "It appears his medication regimen failed." Isla covered her mouth, eyes widening in convincing distress. "How is that possible? He was so careful with his treatment." The doctor shook his head. "Sometimes the virus develops resistance. We're doing everything we can, but his organs are beginning to fail." Tariq Al-Fahim died at 6:17 a.m. as the first light of dawn broke over Dubai. The official cause was listed as complications from AIDS-related pneumonia. The hospital conducted a standard review of his medication regimen but found nothing suspicious, just the tragic failure of treatment in a long-term HIV patient. Isla was interviewed briefly as his private nurse. Her statements were factual, professional, betraying nothing of her involvement. Her grief appeared genuine to everyone who witnessed it. The funeral was held 3 days later at Dubai's most prestigious mosque. Isla attended in modest black attire, her head covered respectfully, her expression appropriately somber. Business leaders, government officials, and social elites filled the prayer hall, many of whom had never visited Tariq during his illness. Zara stood at the front, a vision of dignified mourning in designer black. Her eyes met Isla's briefly across the crowded room, a look that contained recognition but no accusation. Whether she suspected the truth remained unclear, but something in her composed demeanor suggested she would not mourn her husband's passing beyond what propriety demanded. As the funeral procession moved to the cemetery, Isla felt a surprising emptiness where she had expected triumph. Tariq was gone, her revenge complete, yet her own condition remained unchanged. The momentary satisfaction of justice served quickly faded, leaving only the stark reality of her diagnosis and uncertain future. The first indication that her plan had not accounted for everything came a week after the funeral. A letter arrived from Tariq's legal team, informing her that without a formal arrangement or marriage contract, she had no claim to ongoing support from his estate. The apartment had been registered to a holding company, not to her personally, and would revert to the Al-Fahim family assets. Isla stared at the document in disbelief. The settlement Tariq had mentioned had never been formalized. The documents never signed. The promises never legally binding. The second blow came when she attempted to renew her residency visa. As part of the standard procedure, she underwent a mandatory health screening. When the results came back, her world collapsed. HIV-positive status was automatic grounds for deportation in the UAE, no exceptions, no appeals. When she attempted to access the bank account Tariq had set up for her, she discovered it had been frozen pending estate resolution. Her carefully accumulated luxury items remained, but without liquid assets or legal status, their value was effectively trapped. The final humiliation came during a chance encounter with Zara at the Al-Fahim corporate offices, where Isla had gone to plead her case to the family's legal team. "Ms. Santos," Zara acknowledged her with cool composure. "I'm afraid our lawyers have already made the family's position clear. He promised to provide for me." Isla insisted, desperation edging into her voice. After everything, Zara interrupted. "You should consider yourself fortunate to walk away without further complications." Her perfectly manicured hand gestured toward the exit. "My husband's condition was well managed for years. It's unfortunate that circumstances changed so drastically in his final months." Isla studied Zara's face, searching for any indication that she suspected foul play. But Zara's expression revealed nothing beyond polite dismissal. "I have nothing?" Isla whispered, the full weight of her situation crashing down on her. Zara's expression softened fractionally. "You have exactly what you came with, Miss Santos. Your nursing skills, your health compromised as it may be, and a valuable lesson about the true cost of ambition." As security escorted her from the building, Isla realized the terrible irony of her situation. She had executed a perfect revenge, one that could never be proven, never be traced back to her. But in focusing solely on Tariq's destruction, she had failed to secure her own future. The luxury apartment, the designer clothes, the status she had sacrificed everything for, all would be stripped away, leaving her with nothing but a diagnosis and the knowledge that her revenge, while complete, had ultimately cost her everything. The immigration official across the desk wore the impassive expression of someone who had heard every desperate plea imaginable. His office in the Ministry of Labor was Spartan and efficient, a government functionary space where lives were altered by the stroke of a pen. "Your medical screening results have come back," he stated flatly, tapping at Isla's file on his computer screen. "HIV-positive status is grounds for immediate deportation under UAE law." The blood drained from Isla's face. The mandatory health screening, required when applying for a new sponsor after Tariq's death, had revealed the truth she'd hoped to hide. "There must be some exception," Isla argued, maintaining the professional demeanor that had served her well until now. "I'm a healthcare worker. I can manage my condition." "The regulations are clear," he replied, stamping her file with mechanical precision. "You have 14 days to leave the country." Outside the ministry building, Dubai's summer heat pressed down like a physical weight. The city shimmered around her. The same gleaming towers and luxury boutiques that had once represented possibility now transformed into monuments to her failure. Her phone rang. The property management company for the Palm residence, informing her that her lease would terminate in 2 weeks. The apartment had never been hers, merely another illusion in a city built on them. At the bank, the same story repeated. The account Tariq had established for her remained frozen, with no timeline for resolution. The manager, once deferential when she arrived in designer clothes as Tariq's companion, now regarded her with thinly veiled contempt. Another foreign worker whose precarious status had been exposed. That evening, Isla called Maya from a bench outside Dubai Mall, watching tourists snap photos of the Burj Khalifa as the fountain show began. "I need a place to stay," she admitted, the words burning her throat. "Just until I can sort things out." Maya's sigh carried a mixture of concern and resignation. "You can stay with me, but it's nothing like what you're used to. 4 of us in 2 bedrooms. I don't have anywhere else to go," Isla said, her voice smaller than it had been in months. Maya's staff accommodation was exactly as Isla remembered. Cramped, functional, impersonal. The other nurses eyed her designer luggage with curiosity and suspicion as Maya helped her settle into a corner of the shared bedroom. "What happened?" Maya asked later when they had a moment alone. The real story this time. Isla stared at the ceiling, lying on a narrow cot that made her body ache for the king-sized bed in her luxury apartment. "I got what I wanted," she said finally, "and lost everything in the process." Over the next 2 weeks, Isla exhausted every possible avenue to remain in Dubai. She applied for nursing positions at smaller clinics, offering to work for reduced wages. She inquired about other visa categories. She even approached former patients who had once praised her care. Each attempt met the same invisible barrier. Her HIV status made her presence in the UAE illegal, regardless of her skills or connections. In this country where appearances meant everything, her illness made her untouchable. The formal deportation notice arrived 3 days before her visa expired. A simple document stating she had failed the mandatory health requirements and must depart the UAE by the specified date. In a final desperate move, Isla requested a meeting with Zara Al-Fahim. To her surprise, the request was granted. A brief 15-minute slot at the Al-Fahim Foundation offices. Zara received her in the same sleek conference room where they had last spoken. The widow's mourning period was evident only in the subtle black accent of her otherwise impeccable designer outfit. "Ms. Santos," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I understand you're leaving Dubai soon. That's why I'm here," Isla began, fighting to maintain composure. "I believe Tariq would have wanted. What my husband would have wanted is irrelevant," Zara interrupted smoothly. "He is gone. What matters now is what I want." Isla fell silent, recognizing the shift in power dynamics. Zara was no longer the wife overshadowed by her husband's status. She was now the sole authority over the Al-Fahim empire. "I want you gone, Miss Santos," Zara continued, her voice soft but unyielding. "Back to wherever you came from, with nothing but what you brought with you." "You knew," Isla said, the realization crystallizing. "About Tariq's medication. About his condition." Zara's perfect composure never wavered. "I knew about his HIV status from early in our marriage. I kept my distance and protected myself. What happened between the 2 of you was not my concern." "Then why help me leave?" Isla challenged. "Because your presence is a reminder of my husband's indiscretions," Zara replied. "And frankly, his death has freed me from a loveless marriage while leaving me in control of everything. I never knew about his affair with you until after his death, but I knew his pattern with nurses. You weren't the first, just the last." The admission hung between them, an unexpected moment of truth between women who had both been diminished by the same man. "I could have secured my future," Isla said bitterly, "if I'd thought beyond revenge." "That's the problem with vengeance," Zara observed. "It blinds you to everything else." She stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Consider yourself fortunate that I prefer discretion to justice. You'll leave Dubai with your freedom, if nothing else." As Isla turned to go, Zara added. I personally arranged for your visa application to be expedited. I want you to know that. Isla nodded, understanding the message behind the confession. This was Zara's own calculated revenge. Not as final as Isla's had been for Tariq, but devastating in its own way. San Roque looked smaller than Isla remembered. The fishing boats bobbing in the harbor, the market stalls with their pungent odors, the narrow alleys between houses. All seemed diminished after the vast scale of Dubai. She arrived with 6 suitcases containing everything she had salvaged, designer clothes, handbags, jewelry, and electronics she had purchased during her time with Tariq. The customs officials at Manila airport had eyed her belongings suspiciously but found no reason to detain her. Her family's new concrete house stood out among the wooden structures surrounding it. A 2-story building with fresh paint and glass windows, the satellite dish prominently displayed on the roof. Her mother rushed out as the taxi pulled up, her joyful expression faltering slightly at the sight of Isla's haggard appearance. Anik, why didn't you tell us you were coming? She cried, embracing her daughter tightly. It was sudden, Mama, Isla replied, forcing a smile. I wanted to surprise you. The questions began almost immediately. Why had she left her prestigious position? How long would she stay? Was she considering offers from hospitals in Manila? Isla had prepared her story carefully. The hospital is downsizing after my primary patient passed away. I decided it was time to come home and explore opportunities here. Her father nodded sagely. You've done enough for us, Anik. The house, the new boat, we can't ask for more. That night, alone in the room they had prepared for her, the master bedroom with new furniture purchased with the money she had sent, Isla unpacked a fraction of her designer clothes. The Louboutin heels and Chanel dresses looked absurdly out of place against the simple ceramic tiles and whitewashed walls. 3 weeks after her return, Isla visited an HIV clinic in Manila. The facility was overcrowded, understaffed, with peeling paint and outdated equipment. A stark contrast to the gleaming medical centers of Dubai. The doctor who reviewed her case was compassionate but direct. The medication you need is available but expensive. Without insurance, you'll need to rely on government assistance programs, which have long waiting lists. Isla nodded, her nursing background giving her a clear understanding of what this meant. In the Philippines, HIV treatment was inconsistent, often interrupted by supply issues and funding shortfalls. I have some savings, she said, not mentioning that these savings consisted of jewelry she could gradually sell off. How long will that last? The doctor's expression was grim. Not as long as you'll need treatment. By August, Isla had rented a modest apartment in Manila's Malate district, far from the luxury of downtown Dubai but comfortable by local standards. She furnished it with a careful mix of practical items and a few select pieces from her Dubai life. A Persian rug here, a designer lamp there. Small reminders of what she had briefly possessed. She sold her jewelry piece by piece, establishing a fund for her medication and living expenses. Each transaction diminished her safety net, but she calculated she could maintain her current lifestyle for approximately 2 years before needing regular income. Job applications to private hospitals received polite rejections. Her gap in employment, her lack of recent local experience, and perhaps something else, an intuition about her that interviewers couldn't quite articulate, kept doors firmly closed. One evening, as she sat on her small balcony overlooking the congested streets of Manila, Isla's phone displayed a news alert. Tariq Al-Fahim had been named CEO of Al-Fahim Enterprises, consolidating her control over her late husband's business empire. The accompanying photo showed her at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, poised and confident, wearing a subtle smile that suggested satisfaction with her new role. Isla stared at the image, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Rage at what Tariq had done to her. Grim satisfaction that he had paid the ultimate price. Bitter admiration for Zara, who had emerged from the same situation with her power enhanced rather than destroyed. Most of all, she felt the hollow realization that her revenge, perfect in its execution, untraceable in its method, had yielded nothing but emptiness. Tariq was gone, but his legacy remained intact through Zara. Isla had escaped legal consequences but was now trapped in a different kind of prison. one constructed of medical appointments, dwindling resources, and diminished possibilities. The next morning, Isla received an unexpected email from Maya. "I don't know if you want to hear from me," it began, "but I thought you should know that Dr. Krishnan asked about you. The pediatric ward is understaffed, and he remembered your work with the Sheikh's grandson. If you're interested, I could mention you're back in Manila and looking for opportunities." Isla read the message twice, considering the implications. A professional reference from Dr. Krishnan could open doors that had remained firmly shut. It would mean returning to nursing, not in the luxury of Al-Rama's VIP wing, but in the trenches of everyday healthcare. More significantly, it would mean reclaiming the part of herself that had existed before ambition consumed everything else. The part that had genuinely cared for patients, that had found meaning in easing suffering rather than exploiting it. For the first time since her diagnosis, Isla felt something like possibility stirring within her. Not the grand ambitions that had driven her to Dubai, but something smaller, more sustainable. A life rebuilt from the wreckage of her choices. She began drafting her response to Maya, then paused, setting her phone aside. Before deciding her next step, she needed to reconcile with who she had become. That evening, Isla stood at her window overlooking Manila Bay, watching the sunset paint the polluted sky in ironically beautiful hues of orange and pink. The contrast between this view and the panoramic vistas of her Dubai apartment was stark. Yet there was a reality to the skyline that Dubai's artificial perfection had always lacked. She had achieved exactly what she had promised herself in that small fishing village years ago. She had escaped poverty. She had acquired luxury. She had punished the man who betrayed her. Yet none of it had brought the satisfaction she had anticipated. "I will never live like this again," she had vowed as a girl in San Roque, staring at magazine cutouts of the life she coveted. Now, as a woman in Manila, she made a different promise to herself, one not built on acquisition or vengeance, but on the harder work of acceptance and rebuilding. On her bathroom counter, a 7-day pill organizer contained her antiretroviral medication, the daily reminder of everything she had gained and lost in Dubai. Each morning and evening, the ritual of these pills connected her to Taric, to her choices, to consequences that would follow her for life. As she swallowed her evening dose, Isla faced her reflection in the mirror, thinner, older, wiser than the ambitious nurse who had stepped off the plane in Dubai less than 2 years before. "Begin again," she told her reflection, the words both a command and a permission. Outside, Manila continued its chaotic dance of life. Imperfect, difficult, but undeniably real. Tomorrow she would reply to Maya. She would take the first small step toward rebuilding a life from the ruins of her revenge. It would not be the life she had once dreamed of, but it would be hers, hard-won, honest, and perhaps eventually enough. In the fading light, Isla picked up her phone and typed a single sentence to Maya. "Tell Dr. Krishnan I'm available for an interview." She pressed send, then turned away from the window, leaving behind the glittering skyline and the shadows of her past. The path ahead would be difficult, managing her condition, rebuilding her career, learning to live with the knowledge of what she had done. But for the first time since leaving Dubai, Isla felt something beyond emptiness or rage. Not hope exactly, not yet, but the quiet determination that had carried her from San Roque to Dubai had returned, tempered now by experience and loss. This time, it would carry her not toward wealth or status, but toward something she had never considered in her relentless pursuit of advancement: redemption. As night fell over Manila, Isla Santos moved through her modest apartment, turning on lamps, preparing a simple dinner, arranging her medication for the following day. The ordinary rituals of a life that was neither the poverty she had fled nor the luxury she had briefly grasped, but something entirely her own. Perhaps that, in the end, was the true measure of success. Not what you acquired or who you destroyed, but what you managed to salvage from the wreckage of your mistakes. Not the life she had planned, but the life she had earned. Her phone chimed with Maya's response. "Dr. Krishnan says come in on Monday, 9 a.m. Don't be late." Isla smiled. A small, genuine expression that reached her eyes for the first time in months. Monday, a new beginning, a chance to use her skills not for manipulation or advancement, but for healing others and, perhaps eventually, herself. Outside her window, Manila's lights began to glow against the darkening sky, different from Dubai's perfect symmetry and calculated grandeur, but no less beautiful in their chaotic, authentic way. Like the city below, Isla's future would be messy, imperfect, constrained by circumstances beyond her control. But it would be real in a way that her Dubai life never had been, built not on deception and ambition, but on the harder foundation of truth and acceptance. Tomorrow would bring challenges. The day after, more still. But tonight, in this moment of quiet resolution, Isla allowed herself to believe that even a life marked by irreversible consequences could still hold meaning. Not the meaning she had once sought in wealth and status, but something deeper and more enduring. The meaning found in living honestly with the choices that had shaped her, for better and for worse. As she closed her eyes that night, Isla Santos, nurse, avenger, survivor, surrendered not to despair but to possibility. The story that had begun in ambition and ended in revenge would continue, transformed by loss into something she couldn't yet imagine. Not a fairy tale, not a tragedy, simply a life, complicated, constrained, but still worth living, still worth fighting for. And in that quiet acceptance,